Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan anime review. This one's going to be for Season 4, Part 2, Episode 5. And yeah, this was a really good episode of Attack on Titan. We got the thing I've probably been most excited about for this season, which is that we were going to learn the backstory on Ymir, sort of how the Titans sort of started and stuff like that. And we basically got the core of that. They didn't go into like crazy levels of detail, but we got the gist of the story finally. We'd previously, I think, been told it sort of as a legend, sort of more vague iterations of the story, so we had some sense that like, oh yeah, Ymir encountered the like source of all living matter and became the first Titan. But like beyond her just existing as the first Titan, we had no sense for who the character was, and to a degree you could say that we still maybe don't have the greatest sense for the character, in that they told a flashback story where the character of note never spoke a word. Now I suppose it's because they basically say she got her tongue cut out, so that's why she doesn't speak going forward. But even before that, they again didn't like show her speaking at all, so that was very interesting. It's just like, effectively, here is the stuff that happened to her rather than like what she did, which obviously leads into the stuff in the path of Eren basically saying, you're the one with the power, you can choose. You don't have to just, be controlled by someone anymore. You can choose now, and that seems to get through to her, and so Eren gets his version of the plan rather than Zeke's. So very significant events happen here, as this is the episode that I suppose transitions us from setup for the ending into, I guess we are sort of in the ending now. Again, there's still some confusion about, is this season, like Season 4 Part 2, is it actually going to end the Attack on Titan story? Or is there going to be like a part 3, a season 5 that's like a small ending season, or are they going to do a movie? I don't think any of that's still been announced. But I think everyone has interpreted it that the number of episodes we know are in this season, part 2, is not enough to cover all of the manga chapters that there are. So there's something else coming after this. And it makes me very interested to see what they actually like build up to at this point in terms of the finale for Season 4 Part 2. That isn't the end of the series, but like sets it up so that something else can be the kind of climactic final sequence. So what are we building towards, I suppose? Because there's, I think, no other way to interpret the rumbling happening here than this has to be Endgame. Like, is there anything bigger that can happen? I don't think so. Obviously, the interpretation of the rumbling is that like it's here on Paradis, the walls crack, all the giant titans come out, and I guess they're going to have to cross the sea. So there is going to, I guess, be a little bit of a gap in the story as we move from Paradis to those titans hitting land on the rest of the world and doing damage. So that's a way to at least create like a kind of little bit of an arc separation, move us away from just it's all action here on out. There's at least going to be some sort of travel time, even though they're giant titans walking across the sea. So that's something. But yeah, we're definitely in Endgame here, where okay, I guess we're going to find out who dies, who survives just this attack on Paradis and it being completely reversed at this point. And then what do the survivors do to try and stop Eren? Because it definitely feels like at this point what we're building towards is basically all of the cast trying to stop Eren doing what he's doing. I guess there's still going to be some people who support Eren and what he's doing, but I'm guessing most of the characters will eventually turn on Eren's kind of ideals or motivations, whatever they are at this point. And that's going to be the core of the plot. Literally sort of Attack on Titan, like everyone just attacking the giant Titan, I suppose effectively in a way like the return of like the first Titan type thing. But that's just some general thoughts overall in the episode. Let's get into some specifics. So the flashback that we got here, yeah, we finally get to see Ymir. And we get the reveal here that she was a slave. Now, we see her sort of become a slave. She's just a girl living in a random town. Um, King Fritz, I suppose, arrives here and just starts ransacking the place. They immediately take it over, like basically burn it down, enslave the entire village, and cut out the tongues of all of the people so that they can't say anything. And we see like a little bit of a sequence of just her living as a slave, how tortured of an experience this is, and then she lets some pigs escape. Everyone basically gives her up, which is, I suppose, another aspect to this as well, that there doesn't even seem to be too much like loyalty between all the slaves, and that they immediately are just like, she did it. She's forced in front of King Fritz and is asked to admit to it. She does, and she is effectively banished. He says, "You are free," and they immediately cut to her running through the forest away from like archers on horseback. That she is effectively just now treated as like an animal to be hunted. She tries to escape. She gets hit with some arrows. She's pretty badly injured. She rolls down a hill into a kind of a pool of water, and as she's, I suppose, drifting to the bottom, this is where we get the reveal of the sort of source of all living matter, or was it the devil of all earth? There's been a few names for it, I think, given in the series. We get I suppose a proper visual of it for the first time, which is that it is effectively an insect-like thing that looks like a spinal cord. And it effectively attaches onto her spinal cord and immediately turns her into the original Titan. And they pretty quickly like cut straight back to, she goes back to the king. This was kind of the part of the episode where I'm kind of like, whoa, what happened here? She has some sense of like loyalty to it, or like she's brought back, and it's this idea that even though she gains this power, she's been so affected by the way her life has been up to now, that she doesn't seek to use her power like herself to do anything. Like, effectively, it's a situation where no one can really control her. But that's not even like a question here. She is Fritz has control over her effectively, and she works with him initially to help him with all of his conquests, and then he like rewards her by I suppose effectively bearing his children, because he's like, oh, like, let's continue this power that you seem to have, and effectively like it is a like when you break it down, like it is a very sort of brief kind of montage through her life, in that she has kids. We see she has multiple kids, I think 3, and obviously when you get the reveal of their names, it's like, that's what the names of the walls are named after, is the names of her 3 children. So there's that. And then you get to this moment of like the death of Yamir. How was the original Titan killed? And this is, I suppose, one of the more interesting ones in terms of like her characterization. Just the fact that she seemed to return and immediately like be willing to work for him. That she initially, it seems like, she just completely like bought into the idea that she is a slave. She belongs to the king. That's all she can do. She can't even think about the prospect that she's free to choose and do things herself. But then at the big sort of, I suppose, inauguration of like effectively like you've conquered the world almost, one of the guys tries to effectively assassinate King Fritz, and she dives in front of the spear and is killed, because I guess it goes like straight through her heart or something like that. It's like an immediate like lethal blow. There's a slight sense to it, perhaps, that like he does say like there's no way that could have killed you, so he's aware of like she has like hyper healing abilities, but there's also maybe a slight suggestion that she just like accepts that maybe this is her death here, that this is like an opportunity for her to die, and she just takes it. It's interesting that she did that, because again, if she was free to sort of choose herself, she could have just let him be killed and maybe like taken power herself, because she is the one with the power. But no, she chooses out of her own free will here to protect the king. And that speaks to the idea of, again, she doesn't speak, so we don't really get like her motivation throughout this whole thing of, did she grow to actually ultimately support this whole thing? Because the way she's presented, like even in the path, is that you can't see her eyes. Her eyes are covered in shadow, and it gives you the idea that like this is her like as a slave. She can't choose things for herself. And they eventually reveal her eyes when they reveal like her angry expression after Eren speaks to her. But this scene here at the end when she dies seems to suggest that she, whether just that she, it had grown so used to just, this is the way things are, or she had grown to actually like care about the situation that she's in, she chose to protect him when she didn't necessarily have to. Obviously, the whole way through, they are not presenting King Fritz as being a good character at all. He is probably like the most kind of evil, villainous kind of character we've been presented with in the entire series up to now. Just, mindless, killing, attacking, conquering, the way he treats slaves, the way he treats her like the whole time, like she's dying. And you think that maybe to some degree at that point he's kind of like she is really important to me. I have kids with her, and she's like the most important like weapon, that he has some care for her. But no, he's just like, that shouldn't kill you. And then immediately they cut to effectively explaining, okay, how does the Titan powers get passed on? We know how that usually is, and that is, you effectively drink the spinal fluid of a Titan shifter. And we see that he basically has Ymir chopped up and fed to his daughters. And they don't show a lot of it, but like once it becomes clear what they're doing, it's really dark. So this, I suppose, is how he discovers how to pass on Titan abilities from people to people, and he becomes obsessed with keeping this power alive and just being like, you have kids too, and then it should go down in history of Eldia that you always like eat the previous generation to make sure that the powers are passed on. And this obviously is how it eventually, I suppose, gets split up into the different powers of the Titans and so on. But yeah, it's pretty brutal to see that happen. And obviously in this, he, I suppose, discovers that the spine is the key to it. And again, it goes back to where did sort of the source of the Titans latch onto Ymir. It was a spine-like thing that attached onto her spine. So that is kind of interesting. So yeah, there's the explanation for that. And again, it's this kind of dark story of like, he seems to then just live a long life and die of old age. Like nothing bad happens to him. Now, it is one of those things where like, okay, they don't go into like too much detail on sort of like the sins of Eldia, but like it gets across the idea of like, the sins of Eldia is effectively this guy and what he did in the past and how brutal he was in terms of trying to take over the world, and how he was allowed to do that and I suppose gain as much power as he did because of Ymir. Now, it's a very interesting thing in that fundamentally, I suppose the core hatred of Eldians, I suppose, more should be aimed at just this guy and what he felt he was allowed to do, rather than just these people who have the ability to turn into Titans, that again was ultimately caused by this guy and the things that he sort of brought into play by making sure to sort of research how to effectively pass these abilities on. That the hatred of Eldians isn't so much that like, just the people, because they turn into Titans, that's the problem, but to the people who are being attacked by Titans, that was the problem. And it almost like ignored and obscured the fact that the actual villain of the piece was just this cruel, tyrannical ruler, who wasn't himself a Titan, and he ultimately created this hatred of all of his people because of things that he decided to do. That's, I think, a very interesting thing in all of this, that when you get back into sort of the main story and what we're dealing with, it's very focused on just sort of eliminating Titans from the world. But a lot of what happened in the past was effectively just sort of one single Titan being led by a vicious ruler. And this has sort of caused all of this problem. So it makes you think about the whole sort of like, do the Eldians need to pay for the sins of the past? Well, obviously, like it was explained in the last episode, people's memories were removed. Like, they don't remember any of this. One, it was so long ago, and then one, they literally can't remember because it was taken away from them. So there's a sense for like, I sort of get it now. That this was a terrible thing that happened in the past, but it was so long ago that effectively, I suppose, except for, I suppose, like Zeke and Eren and people like that, no one actually knows the truth of the situation in the past, other than, general kind of, things that happened in history. So, but it's going to be interesting to see how they play on this, because when we go back to sort of the more present day story, the rumbling is activated and Eren is explaining to everyone that effectively he's going to use the rumbling to, I suppose, kill everyone who's not on Paradis Island, which is, I suppose, the reverse of what they want to do to the Eldians. Like, the people who hate aliens want to eliminate them from existence, and he's just doing the reverse of that. It's interesting because, of course, for some people, like the people who support Eren, this is exactly what they want. But to a lot of our other main cast members, like Armin and Mikasa, they are sort of appalled that Eren is going this far. That, like, Armin has to say the words effectively like we won, but like, is this what we want? And like they don't really. So this is what's obviously setting up the idea of, there's been some discussion among the main cast as to, would Eren go this far? What is he actually trying to accomplish? Do they believe he can do the extent of the bad things that they think he could be doing? It seems like that is now the case, and now a decision is going to have to be made of, like, they sort of protected him from being killed, but now that he's accomplished sort of what he wanted to do at the start, who do they support now? I suppose there's got to be some sense of just, they're just going to be taking down Titans to help people survive, and then dealing with, like, okay, what do we do? How do we stop, or do we allow it to happen with Eren? This is going to have to get into, I suppose, who is left in terms of, like, the leadership of Paradis, and how do they view Eren's actions. And then, like, even Yelena, when she saw what was happening, seemed a little bit like, she's usually the one to get into it like crazy, but I suppose she was more supporting Zeke in the grand scheme of things rather than this. So there's a lot of characters who are going to have to make some decisions about, like, what side they're on in this. But it fundamentally does feel like this is going to have to be everyone against Eren, because even Zeke was told by Grisha to stop Eren. Again, a lot of the question is going to have to come down to, what exactly did Eren see? He saw the future, he saw, like, this happening, but that would also suggest that he saw if he succeeded or was defeated. And it gets into the idea of, like, they've introduced this sort of, you can sort of influence the past because you can see the future and selectively show people things to manipulate them. But Eren seems to have seen, like, it all. So is he kind of doing this because he knows ultimately he will be defeated, which will get rid of Titans? Because I guess the giant Titan form that he has will be when the source of the Titans will be vulnerable, and so if he's killed, that thing will be killed, and that will stop it all. And the only way to make that happen is ultimately to get to this point when it's actually vulnerable. But the only way for him to be defeated is to turn everyone against him and have, like, all of humanity sort of work together to fight him. Which, that would at least be something if that is Aaron's goal, that he effectively unites, like ends the long-going conflict between Eldians and Marley, and effectively the rest of the world, the Alliance, whatever they're calling it. If he ends it by sacrificing himself, that's something. But again, a lot depends on explaining his motivations towards the end of the series, if he even gets that opportunity, because it already feels like the character is a little bit too far gone in terms of just wanting to do this. Now, it is in character for Eren to sort of be like this, but again, they're holding back on what did he see, and is he being informed by he knows he'll be defeated, or is he being informed by, like, in the future I saw that, like, I won and I actually accomplished what I wanted to do, and he actually does kill all the population except for Eldians. And you know, what does that say about the character? There's stuff like that that's very interesting, in that they're very much playing with the idea of freedom, free will, choice, and in a way, like, how much do you actually have when you're, in a way, like, locked into these situations where either it's you're like the past rulers have created this lock that the current rulers can't actually act, or then you have with the Attack Titan, it's more so the Attack Titans of the past are influenced by the Attack Titans of the future, and how much free will is in play there because of manipulation and all this sort of stuff. It's complicated things, and it's interesting, but he has to have a good, like, ending to all of this as well. So I definitely like where we're at now. It's just like this final sequence here, dealing with the rumbling and I suppose the finale of the series. This is where he's going to have to deliver. This is where so many manga, even recent ones like, say, Promised Neverland, which had amazing setup but missed on the ending, it can go wrong from here. Even though the setup is good, it can go wrong from here, because if you're suddenly turning Eren, like your main character, into the villain, who is your new hero character? And just because of, like, the characterization of a lot of the rest of the cast, it's like Mikasa is a main character, but I don't know if she necessarily works if you're trying to turn her into, like, the new absolute main character, just because of what arcs and dynamics they've been doing with for her. Armin, I guess, but again, his arcs are very specific. And then, you know, Falco, Gabi, the sort of newer kind of main cast members, like, are we doing anything with them? It's just like Eren is very clearly the most, like, notable, sort of memorable character in the show. Everyone else feels just like a little bit of a step down from that, and can anyone step up to be the main character when I guess they're like's been going on for effectively all of season 4. Eren, they're holding back on having him, I suppose, reveal his, like, true motivations or talk sort of massively openly about how he feels about things. So we're not even getting, like, full Eren. So a lot of the other characters do need to step up. So there's still a lot else going on. Like, we haven't cut back to, like, what's going on with Levi. Is he recovering somewhere now? We haven't cut back to that in a while. But it looks like next episode is going to just be everyone realizing we've got to take out some of these Titans just to get out of here alive. And then we have to figure out what's going on. I think that's probably the next sort of port of call to actually do in the story. But yeah, other than that, I love this episode. But the tough part of the writing in terms of executing the series is definitely next. The entire rest of this season, and then however they do the actual, like, final section, that's going to have to be where they get it right. So they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.